Okay, now I think we have Vince Coleman ready, the Cardinal Hall of Famer who will be in town for the game on Thursday. And then afterwards, Vince is going to be signing autographs at the Westin Hotel on 801 Spruce Street, right across the street from the ballpark in the couples ballroom from 6:30 to 8:30. He'll be there on opening day. You can get tickets for autographs, $25 for an autograph. And with an inscription, you can get one. And you can also enjoy a souvenir plastic baseball hat filled with ice cream and your choice of toppings. And one of the other cool things, oh, there he is right there, is that if Vince Coleman receives the word from you that you heard about Vince on the Randy Carricker show, you're going to get a free baseball card from him too. There is the Cardinal Hall of Famer wearing his STL t-shirt. How are you?
I'm doing great. First of all, I give praise and thanks to our Father in heaven through his son, Jesus Christ, for ever giving me the opportunity to ever put on a St. Louis Cardinal uniform. You know, nothing means more to me than coming back to St. Louis and enjoying this opening day here. No fans rock the house like St. Louis. You know, they're exciting, they're passionate, they're loyal. Once you go out and you see that city of red and white, you know, it just brings so much thrills and memories back to my life. You know, playing there for 6 years was the greatest moments of my life. And, you know, whenever you come to St. Louis, they treat you like royalty. And I can't wait to opening day.
We're looking forward to it. And Vince, I was just mentioning, I don't know if you heard, but when you came up in '85, and we covered the team for the first week of the season, and then you came up, and I just got a different vibe from that clubhouse after you came up, and I think it was your infectious personality that led to it. But how important was it for you just to come in and have fun, have a good time?
Oh, it was great. The stage was set. You know, it was a tailor-made situation for me being in the St. Louis Cardinals organization. They was built for speed. And the way you do anything is the way you do everything, is the hard work you put in. And I think, you know, being in the minor leagues, you was prepared for that moment. And once I got there, you know, Whitey gave me the green light, you know, and the only thing that he wanted me to do was go out and perfect my craft. And that was day in and day out. And the energy that you brought to the ballpark every day, and it just vibed and just kind of like trickled down the lineup. You know, it made it much fun. But the electricity, when you walked into that stadium, you saw that red and white, you know, it was something that you wanted to do day in and day out and excite the fans. And, you know, one thing I missed most was making the fans cheer. And every time I got on base, you could hear the electricity into the crowd and the fans. And when you stole bases, you ran around those bases, it was just so much energy and positive environment. And, you know, it made us fun. It made us a great competitive ball club, but it wasn't one thing that we was always prepared.
When you were talking about Vince, Whitey giving you the green light, what was that conversation like with him where he said, okay, go do your thing out there?
Well, I can remember walking in. I got the call up, and I got to the stadium, and you know, I met Mike Whitey on the bench, and you know, he was always so positive and made sure that you know that I was accepted throughout the clubhouse, and you know. It wasn't that you was an individual that you was going out to try to just pad your stats, but this was something that I had built a reputation on, was that being in the minor league, stealing a lot of bases. And now, you know, it was always like, well, if you steal 40, 50 bases, you'll be great. But I told Whitey, I said, you know, I'm going to be better than great. You know, Whitey always assured me that, you know, you can be better than Lou Brock, you know, if you went out. And the biggest compliment that Lou Brock ever gave me was that he was the best I ever seen steal third base. And with that being said, you know, he wanted to know my tips and tendencies and flaws, the things that I've learned when I was in the minor leagues, that every pitcher had a flaw. And the one advantage that I had was that being in Busch Stadium is that the pitcher's mound was always over there in the left field dugout, a bullpen over there getting loose over there. So I can go out early in the ball game and watch the flow, the tempo, you know. So I had a heartbeat, and my heartbeat never got high, you know, because it was always at a temperature where that I can gauge it, and I never got nervous, you know, because I was always prepared with going into that ball game. But Whitey, only time Whitey ever really got mad at me once was that when I wasn't stealing bases, I kind of like changed the flow of the game in 1988 when pitchers started to slide step and changing quick pitching and balking, and I wasn't going right away. And Whitey called me into the office and he said, Vince, you're the best base stealer in the world I ever seen. Do not let them stop you. They can't stop you. They can only try to contain you. So, you know, it was always a positive voice from Whitey day in and day out, influencing me. And I had the biggest support from my teammates. I think that was the one thing that really engaged me day in and day out. I had the biggest support. It's not that Vince was trying to steal 100 bases every year. It was only because they knew that if I got on base, I would put them in a position to win.
Vince Coleman will be signing autographs at the Westin from 6:30 to 8:30 on Thursday night after the Cardinals opener against the Twins. You can just go to the couples ballroom and you can get an autograph, get a ticket, and get an autograph from the great Vince Coleman. Vince, you talk about Lou always talked about base stealing being a science, and I know in talking to you about it over the years, you look at it as a science. Do you think players now, and you work with young players, do you think that they look at base stealing and think, okay, this could be a science that I can really get good at?
Well, of course. I mean, I think base stealing is a form that you have to go out and start at a young age. The best form of learning, or I should say running, is from the ground up. So when you was in minor leagues, you were coming up as a kid, you always play, various sports. You played soccer, track, basketball. So it's the instincts that really takes you to the next level. And as I said earlier, was that it's a heartbeat, it's a DNA, it's a blood pressure. Do you really get nervous when you want to go out there and compete? Are you prepared for that moment? I thought base stealing for me started before the game even started because I knew exactly the tips and tendencies of the flaws that a pitcher may have, and it's a lot of studying that you have to go into to know to perfect your craft. From the head to the toes to the hands, and what is the advantage that you may see that gives you that tip, because the timing has to go in sync that once you get on base and you don't get nervous about it. You have to go out and work on the read, the lead, and then the jump, and that's something that you have to and perfect. You may have guys that go out and steal a base, but to become a great base stealer, you have to put time and effort into it day in and day out.
And when you watch today's game, how do you think teams do in terms of trying to defend the run?
Well, right now, they're doing various things, by quick pitching and slide stepping and maybe even balking, whether the umpire may see it or not. And that was one of the things that I knew that going into a ball game, I knew Rick Sutcliffe would always balk, Rick Roden would always balk. So there's something that I would go to the umpires and say, hey, look, this guy has a great balk move. So let's be prepared for that once you get there. But once I got on second base, the things that I look for was the catcher. He sets up in the middle of the plate, it's going to be off speed. He sets up on the corners, it's going to be fastball. And if a pitcher might be one look and you look at the bib of the cap. So there's various things as a base stealer. They can't stop me. I can only stop myself. But every time I went into a ball game, I knew exactly who was going to throw more off-speed pitches. And once I got to second base, I knew that I had an advantage, especially if he was a left-hander. There's no way he can make a 360 move back to second base and pick me off. That was just my belief, and that's what I proved. And, I had the belief that, Ozzie was going to take, or whoever was batting second, that was going to allow me to steal that base. So, you can do all you can to try to stop me, but you couldn't, because I was prepared for that moment, and I brought on that challenge day in and day out.
Vince, I wanted to ask you about two of the young Cardinals, Victor Scott II making the opening day roster, and Masyn Winn, of course. Great season for him last year, and hopefully we'll be able to build upon that this year. Both have shown the capability of stealing a lot of bases, especially Victor Scott II in 2023, stole 94 stolen bases. What do you think about those two young guys?
Well, I just hope that they go out and they use the whole field as a hitter. I mean, we can't steal first base. So, giving them the opportunity to go out and steal the bases mean that they have to be on base. If they utilize from a step batting standpoint, to know that they're going to use the whole field, giving them opportunity to keep the ball out of the ground, giving themselves the opportunity to be on base, then I think they can be more effective. They're great guys, great kids. With a lot of speed, a lot of determination, desire. I've seen them over the years. I just wish them a lot of luck, and hopefully that they can go out and just put the time in to perfect it, and they have the green light from the managers that allow them, that don't handicap them by, holding them back. Once they get on, they got to convince themselves that, and that's the one thing that they have to do, is convince the manager that he knows what they're doing once they get out on base, and then they won't, be a red light. You always want that green light. You don't want to get a sign from a manager to say you can go on this particular pitch. Going into that ball game, they have to know who I can steal off of, who's has I don't keep a time, but I look at the deliveries, so those are certain mechanics and certain things that, going to that ball game, that the tips and tendencies and flaws that the pitchers may have, they deliver to the plate, whether the position of their hands, the position of their heads, the position of their knees, they have to know that going into that ball game. And if they can perfect that, then they will have a lot of success.
All right, Vince, I want to test your memory here. I'll see if you remember some things. Do you remember in 1986, Chris Welch of the Reds throwing over to first against you 17 times before you stole second? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. And I say it because when I came up through the minor leagues, I mean, you had a lot of lefties, Randy Myers, you had Tom Brown and Chris Welch yourself coming up through the Reds organization. So those are the things that I had studied and I built upon. So when I got to the big leagues, I looked like a genius because I knew that, what his flaws were, you know what I mean? So yes, he threw over 17 straight time. I think that came out on the Instagram like last couple of weeks ago. And I remember being with Pete Rose. I told Pete Rose we became good friends because, we spent a lot of time together just in that moment right there. But, there again, going into that ball game, I was prepared. I knew Chris Welch very well. But every left-hander, that came into a ball game, I had a notebook. I had all the flaws. I keep saying flaws because that's the thing that I studied and I built upon, because that's what was my craft, and that's what I studied and I built upon it, and I believe, and that was my belief. So Chris Welch was a guy that threw over 16, 17 straight time, and on the 18th time I took off, and I think I stole third base as well. So.
All right. How about the game against the Giants where you guys had the big lead and Whitey let you guys keep running, and Whitey actually got into it with Roger Craig. Remember that?
Yeah, that was a great moment. Whitey always defended us. I mean, we wasn't, we only had one home run hitter, and that was Jack Clark. But that particular day, I stole in 5 innings, I may have had 5 stolen bases, and the score at the time I was 5-0 in the 5th inning, and I was, Roger Craig summons for their pitcher to hit me, which he did, and he threw him out of the game, and the big argument was that when he came to the plate, he was like, Whitey, you can't let your guys run. Whitey was like, you guys had Jeffrey Leonard and Chili Davis and Candy Maldonado and Mitch Williams. And so, you have all these home run hitters just in the 5th inning, so we have to manufacture runs and keep running the best way we can. And you know what? The ending of that game, I think it was came to be a very close ball game because they almost came back on us and beat us. But that was our style of play, and everybody know going into the ball game, we wasn't trying to show anyone up but that was the only way that we could stay afloat and stay competitive and earn the respect that we did throughout the league, was that we just had to keep running and keep the pressure. And Whitey always said that we make them play a simple game of catch, but now they got to put a time limit on it. And once you do that, then it's very tough to defend, knowing that we could never give in to anyone. So we can't tell you to stop hitting home runs, so don't tell us that we can't stop stealing bases.
Okay, and then one other story, and I know you know this one because we talked about it at the Baseball Writers dinner, but maybe my favorite play in all of these years of watching baseball is you and Willie with the double steal at Wrigley.
Oh, yes. Going into that ball game, I knew I needed one base to break Samuel stolen base record, 76. And it was late in the ball game, and there it go again. I knew Scott Sanderson on the mound, and so a guy that I had a lot of dates with. So, I got in that situation where that second base and Jody Davis was a great catcher, one of the one catcher that I would say probably was the best catcher in baseball at that time. But, there again, Scott Sanders, he one look to second base, and I knew he was throwing an off-speed pitch, and I gave Willie the sign that I was going to go. But once I took off the third base, and I went head first, and I couldn't grab onto the base, and I kind of overslid it. But my first instinct was just to get up and go, so which I did. I got up and I went to home plate, and now you're in a pickle or something that we worked on in the minor leagues, and you give a fake one way, but the thing was is that Scott Sanderson did not cover home plate. And so he should have went to third. He went to third base, should have went home plate. So that left, once Jody Davis made the throw to third base, it made it open, and I was able to go. Matter of fact, if you can see this picture right here, this picture right behind me, that's the play right there.
Really?
I have it on
That's
my wall,
fantastic.
and that's one of my namesakes there that in my house here that I love. That's one play that a memorable moment. I mean, I had so many memorable moments in St. Louis. I mean, I come down here in this room here, and I just reminisce over my days with the Cardinals, and sometimes I just bring tears to my eyes just to look around, and it was a true blessing. Coming up as a kid, not knowing that much about baseball. I wasn't really a baseball fan. I was a football guy, went to college on a football scholarship, but once I was convinced that I could perfect stealing bases as a craft, and once I got into the minor leagues organization, and I saw Ricky Henderson, and all I wanted to do is be Ricky Henderson. I got a funny story to tell you about Ricky Henderson was that, so after, I started switch hitting in 1980, 83 in the minor leagues. I'm 23 years old. And so, but George Kissel came to me and said, the only way you're going to make it to the major leagues is that you learn how to switch it, because that's what Whitey wants in the big leagues. Here I am, 23 years old, been a right-handed hitter my whole career life, and so now I started beginning to switch it and toying with it. And now, next thing you know, I'm in the big leagues, and I'm facing Nolan Ryan, the Or Hershiser, and Doc Gooden. Man, this is tough. But I battle. I was such a competitor. All I want to do is keep the ball on the ground and, play pepper with the shortstop and beat it out and run like hell. And that's all Whitey wanted me to do. But you look at my batting average, I always had a higher batting average by 100 points on the right side, because that's my natural side, than I did the left side. Even though, I was batting around 270, 260, not a great on base percentage. So this is in 1988, and I'm around the cage in Dodger Stadium, and we facing Fernando Valenzuela this night, and I hit a couple of home runs in batting practice. So I'm feeling good about my swing. I say, Whitey. So after I take my turn, I come around and I go to Whitey. I say, Whitey, won't you just let me hit right-handed? I could be like Ricky Henderson. He says, son, you'll be frying fish.
So that's awesome. Hey, Vince, I remember going into Lee Elia's office one time. He was a manager of the Phillies. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but he said, man, that Coleman he intimidates the hell out of our pitchers. Were you aware of the fact? Did you know that you intimidated the hell out of pitchers?
Well, I was always just this kid that came up, I was just so competitive throughout my whole career. I learned playing football and being tough, and the mentality was that, you give out before you give in, so it was almost like, you couldn't intimidate me, because when I came up playing, as a kid, it was always playing against the older kids. And I was the only child. They had no brothers or anything to protect me of anything. So I had to earn my respect and wherever I went. So when I got to the minor leagues, it was almost like I had Don Blasingame. Don Blasingame taught me all the things that I needed to know about how to dissect pitchers. And once I figured that out, and then I put it to task, and I saw that I could dominate a game by being on the bases. So no matter where I was, I knew that would take me to the next level. And that proved to me once I was in AAA with Jim Fagosi. And Jim Fagosi would always tell me was that, Vince, you are one day going to do something in this game that no one has never done, And what do you mean by that? Well, as a result, no one had never stole 100 bases 3 years in a row, So, and it was only been in the history of baseball that 4 guys ever steal 100 bases. And that gave me the incentive that once I got to the big leagues, along with Whitey Herzog, that you are the best ever did it. And so, and I always go back to Ricky Henderson. Ricky Henderson had a 400 on base percentage. My best years as a on base percentage was maybe 350. And but I took advantage of my time of being on base. If you look at the 200 times I was on base per year, only 200, and able to steal 100 bases out of those 200 times, my stolen base totals versus my percentages outdo anybody, especially going to third base. I know I have the highest percentage of being safe at third base than anyone. That's only because I studied my craft, I perfected it, and I believe in it. And I would love to be a Cardinals coach to teach those kids, Victor Scott, on how to perfect it, to put the time in it. But whether the analytics show that this day and age is that it doesn't value, there's no value in the running game. It's too much of a risk. Too many injuries they've observed. They kind of put a strangle on the running game right now, which really hurts, does a disservice to the fans of St. Louis, because that's what you used to, the excitement, not someone swinging for the fence, striking out, trying to hit home runs. You want someone on the bases going when the ball was in the dirt, breaking up double plays, going from first to third, scoring from second on base hits. When the last time you ever seen a delay steal? You have not seen a delay steal. So they fall asleep when they go to first base now only because they've been told what not to do, what you can't do. I'm a coach. I'm going to tell you how to. I'm the how-to coach, opposed to the how not to. So I want you to have that frame of mind once you get on base, that I can dominate how I can get to second base, how I'm going to get to third base, how I'm going to get home. And that's the mentality that Ozzie had, Willie had, Jack Clark, Tommy Hurt. And I say it all the time. We had the best team in the world. We had the best team in the world. We had an all-star at every position. We had an all-star at every position. I made that video. Yeah, I mean, it was Art Holiday, years ago when they was pouring the champagne over my head. It was so much fun because that's what I believe. And that was all because of the Cardinals way, and there's only one way, and it's the Cardinal way. And that's the way we played the game of 1985. It was so much fun.
Vince, I think a lot of fans would love to see that. If we get back to that type of baseball here in St. Louis, I'm already seeing the comments coming on the YouTube of people talking about how you definitely made the pitchers worried every time that you were out there on the bases. And we had a question from Bob where he says, how would you deal with the pitch clock? I was curious about that too, with all these new rules in Major League Baseball, the pitch clock, the bigger bases. How much would have you taken advantage of that back in the day?
Oh my God, the pitch clock for number one is like a starting block. You're there and you see 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You take off because they can't throw. Especially if they've thrown over twice already. You can't go, so you can see that to your advantage. I mean, so. At the same time, whether you're first or second base, and then the bases are being short. Opposed to me taking 11 steps, I'm taking 9 steps to first base. I mean, it would be not even fair this day and age and starting a base run on second base with in the extra innings. Can you imagine starting me at second base? So it will be, what they're trying to do is duplicate what we did. They're trying to speed up the game. They're trying to make the game more exciting, more fun of what we did during our playing days in this time. So they're trying to teach that. You can't teach that. This day and age, you see baseball players, and that's what they are, baseball players. The travel ball, the club ball has really hurt the game because these kids play baseball year round. They're not athletes. Athletes played football, basketball, ran track, played soccer, the instincts part. You can't teach that. That's a God gift. That's part of your DNA. That's who identifies you, who you are, that makes you that athlete. We was just an athlete just so happened to play baseball. When you look at Lou Brock, Ricky Henderson, Tim Raines, Jackie Robinson, they was all football players, running backs. The instincts are there. Look at Dave Winfield, Ryan Sandberg, Tony Gwynn, all great athletes that could have played multiple sports. Kenny Lofton, played multiple sports. So the instincts are there, something you can't teach. These kids all the day for the last 20 years have just played baseball their whole career. So now you're looking for them to do something that they fear. The blood pressure goes up. They get nervous. I talked about that earlier. When your blood pressure get up, when you go in there and you cram for a test, you don't study for a test. Now you got to go out there and expect a good grade, but you didn't study. So now how you expect to get on base and not go when you don't study, you don't prepare for it? You get nervous. Loose muscles are quick muscles, so you got to stay positive the whole time. So I pray every day, that the game change back to where it is. The fun part, because guys back in the 80s, in the early 90s, that the fans that what you was introduced to, you just don't see this day and age.
Cardinal Hall of Famer Vince Coleman will be introduced before the game on Thursday. Then after the game, 6:30 to 8:30, he'll be at the Westin, the couples ballroom, signing autographs. The Westin right across the street from the ballpark. And if you mentioned that you heard about him on the Randy Carricker Show, he's going to get you a free baseball card as well. Looking forward to having you back in town. Okay, one more thing, and this is very serious, Mr. Coleman. You have something to say?
Well, I was just going to say a recap on, if they heard it, and they mentioned to me that they heard it on your show, they get a free card as well. So it's almost like buy one, get one free, you know what I mean? So in our side, we're going to have fun. We'll take pictures, hang out. There's no rush. This is the first time Westin Hotel ever did this. So it's new to them. But I want to give this is, as an athlete, your most valuable commodity is time. And, for me to give my time and just to hang out, just to have fun for 2 hours after the game, I want it to be an intimate, time, have fun, there's no pressure. There's no promoters. These are no promoters that, dealers, card dealers. This is not that type of atmosphere. This is a fun time where you can come out and rub elbows and take pictures and have a conversation, with me. And I want everybody that listening today to come on over after the game, hang out at the Westin Hotel and have some fun.
It'll be great. Okay, so I need to ask you this one before we let you go. So I want you to stay over Thursday night. Ozzie is going to take you to whatever golf course he plays at. Who wins golf, 18 holes, Vince Coleman, Ozzie Smith?
Well, I started playing golf in 1985 with Rick Horton, was the first guy that ever introduced you to the golf. And I, like anything else, I hate to lose. I'm very competitive, and I work at it. Ozzie didn't start playing golf until 1995. So I had a 10-year start on Ozzie. Now, I tell you this, Ozzie and I, at Michael Jordan's golf tournament in Vegas, Ozzie, and I told Michael, I said, I want Ozzie as my teammate, and they was like, oh, normally he wouldn't give me a good player because he knew that the field wouldn't have a chance, but they didn't know how good Ozzie was, So, Ozzie a Golden Glove, 18 Gold Glove, he got good hands, and Ozzie and I went out and won that tournament. He is adapted to the game very well. I mean, all right now, Ozzie's about a 4 handicap, which is very competitive. I mean, very good. I mean, don't fall asleep on him now. He can make some putts, and he doesn't miss any fairways. That's the Ozzie advantage. So, but we compete all the time, we'll love to play but I don't know if the weather permits while I'm there this week, but, Ozzie is a very competitive golfer, and we both are very competitive, and we'll give you a good game.
Okay, that's a very diplomatic answer, Vince. Hey, it's great to see your face. Great to hear your voice. Can't wait to see you when you're in town on Thursday, and we want everybody to come by and pick up an autograph as well. Vince, thanks so much for the time. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Me too. Take care. He's as good as it gets, isn't he?
Oh my gosh, yes. And also, you heard that statement, Cardinals. Vince Coleman wants to come in and work with your young players, with Masyn Winn and with Victor Scott II, with everybody on this team. You have a young athletic team. You know that, Cardinals. Let's ditch the analytics and just let these guys run wild.